what's up everybody? Welcome to the Rules of Engagement. As always, I'll be your host, Nick axslav, as we take a look at some of the strategies and tactics used in the game of Starcraft 2. Today we're going to take a look at a couple of games from last week's WCS America Challenger Group C. First, we'll take a look at a game between Huck and Capoch in PvP, talking about basically how important map control is in PvP. They're going to talk about an Immortal Gateway timing in PvT in Huck versus XY, and then one base Blink Stalker build again in PvT and XY versus Capoch. Following these three segments is going to be the Q&A, so submit any questions you have to me on Twitter at @axslav. Also, feel free to leave your questions in YouTube comments under youtube.com/official MLGST2. Find some of the most recent Rules of Engagement videos, and you can leave your questions there, and I'll answer them at the end of the next Rules of Engagement episode. So our first segment is going to be on map control in PvP in Huck versus Capoch. And first, we'll talk about how to defend a 4-gate. Then, if you have map control and a contain, how to properly play that game from there on to turn that into a win. Then also how to break a contain and some tips and tricks to do so. We're starting this replay pretty early off at the 4-minute mark. As we can see here, this is Huck is doing a 4-gate right here. You can tell because he's adding up, 4 gateways, chrono boosting warp gate, classic 4-gate, right? On the other hand, Capoch is playing a more, chrono up boosting the workers a little bit more in Nexus and going straight for that Twilight Council. He's going to end up going for a Blink. It could be Blink or DTs. It's not super important. There's a general rule, though. If you're trying to defend a 4-gate, there is one of two things needs to happen. You either need to have enough sentries early on. You can keep them at bay with force fields up until you can catch up in units. Or you need to make sure they never get any proxy pylons super close to your base. So that's exactly what we see Capoch is doing here, is he's going to make sure that if Huck wants to go into his face and build proxy pylons, he's going to pay the price. So right now it's 1 Stalker, 1 Zealot versus 1 Stalker, 1 Zealot. But even if your opponent's 4-gating, one important thing to note, their second Stalkers, Huck's second Stalker is right here. Capoch's second Stalker, just slightly later because he got the gateway slightly later, is already here. So because of the rally distance, now he has a unit advantage. And using that unit advantage, what he should be able to do is he should be able to keep his opponent from getting these early pylons up. You can see he's going to chase a bit, then realize he has to kill this pylon and go and kill that. Of course, he has the Demolition Core here closer as well, because his opponent's not going to have him when he's 4-gating, and that can help out as well. So basically, if you're defending a 4-gate, do not let them get close to you unless you're going to have a lot of sentries. One of those two things needs to be true. And then if they have to warp into units further back, of course, they're still going to have more units than you, but it's going to take them longer to hit the front of your base. Then the second rule defending 4-gates then applies is never take an engagement when they have more units than you. So if you didn't use the time warp to get that 1 Stalker kill, ideally he would have used Photon Overcharge right now, and ideally he wouldn't be fighting here, but he got caught off guard and Huck kind of ran him down and got 2 Stalkers for 1, a good trade. But then the idea is, okay, because he doesn't have an early proxy pylon, right? Every time he warps in units, they have to be back here. When I warp in units, they can be right here. So even if I have less units than him total, every time I hit my warp in, I should be to match his numbers, and I'll fight only in those moments when I have my warp in advantage. When his extra units arrive at the battle, when these warped in units that he's making come in, that's when I'm going to avoid fighting. And this is where the base layout is so important. A couple things that we're going to see as a micro battle round that's very important to notice is look at the base layout of Capoch. Is the way every single gateway has at least 2 pylons powering it. So Huck can't just snipe 1 pylon and depower a lot of the warp gates. That's very important. You need to have those warp gates powered throughout the battle. The second thing that's important is the positioning. So when Huck moves over here to focus this pylon, right, what does Capoch do? He moves over here to the left side. And what does this create? This creates the threat of an engagement at a very interesting angle. So the threat is this, that these Stalkers, they're going to head over here, and they're going to form a line right here, right? And why is that a threat to Huck? Well, the threat is because look at Huck's Stalker position. This line can all attack these Stalkers right here, right? So it's going to be the entire army of Capoches versus a single Stalker of Huck's. To deal with that, what Huck has to do is he has to kind of reform his army into a line that can oppose it, so he doesn't have, just 1 Stalker on the edge being focused down by the entire amount of Capoch's forces. And while he is trying to reposition his units to deal with this threat of Capoch moving down here, he's not going to be killing the pylon. So that's the goal of micro. When you have less units, you threaten attacks or you try to pick away at the units that are exposed, and then you wait until you have enough units to actually get that direct engagement, What Capoch is doing right here is he's playing for time. And why is he playing for time? Well, because that Twilight Council he has is working on Blink, and Blink's almost done, right? So we see that he moves down here. Huck has to move down so that if Capoch tries to go through this and get that line set up, all of a sudden Huck is the one who can focus units one by one, and Capoch retreats. But all this is bought enough time, and now Huck's realized, you know what? I have to get out of here, because if Huck stays here, once Blink completes, Capoch will just butcher him, because Blink stalkers with good micro are going to absolutely destroy non-Blink stalkers. We can see that as soon as he has Blink, he's going to charge across the map. We can just fast forward this. He's going to catch these Zealots, but Huck was smart enough to retreat fast enough that he wouldn't lose any of his important stalkers. He also realized that as soon as as soon as this pylon here died, and he lost the probe too, so he didn't have a really close proxy pylon, 4-gate wasn't going to work, so he immediately transitioned into adding to a box facility. He's using a single force field to buy himself time to get that first Immortal out. So now we're in a situation where Huck got the Sentry as Immortal, so he's not going to die to this Blink Stalker attack. Right? If you look at the unit counts, it's 11 Stalkers from Capoch. Huck has 6 Stalkers and Immortal and some extra Zealots. He should be okay defending. But of course, on the same token, he can't fight in the open right now. If you're in a situation in PvP where your opponent cannot fight in the open, and you're right in front of their base, this is when you have a contain. And to make it a strong, well, to make it a contain, all you have to do is you have to warp in a Sentry. As soon as you warp in a Sentry, your opponent can't move down the ramp, because if they try to move down the ramp, you're going to cut their army in half every time they try to do so, right? So from Capoch's point of view, what he wants to do is he wants to, okay, see, maybe I can kill my opponent. Okay, I can't kill him. So he knows, he said he couldn't kill him because he's got 2 Immortals, enough units going to Blink on top of him. He knows now he's in a situation where he has to contain. So he's checking for proxy pylons, right? Trying to make sure he's not caught off guard by any crazy proxy pylons. And he's going to warp in a Sentry to make that a true contain. And once that Sentry comes in here, now if Huck tries to push down the ramp, all of a sudden Huck's going to be in problems, because Capoch can cut his army in 2 and deal with it pretty easily. Now, from Huck's point of view, he's in a situation where, okay, right now economically, we're even, right? Or, I mean, even if there's a slight worker difference, even if, let's say, Capoch had 35 workers, they're basically even, because they both know we're each on one base. At best, Capoch is just starting Nexus right now. I know he didn't have one earlier because I was 4-gating him, right? So they're economically roughly even. Huck has a stronger army right now. Now that he has, well, as soon as the 3rd Immortal comes out, he'll have a stronger army in a straight-up fight. I mean, if you look at it, it would be 7 extra Stalkers, but there'd be 3 Immortals on Huck's side. But he can't get down the ramp. So after the 3rd Immortal comes, what's the best way to break and contain? It's always with a counterattack. This is another way to break and contain, is you charge down the ramp and hope to miss the force field. And this can sometimes work. Sometimes if you have no sentries, you can even use force fields to keep your sentry back far enough. But the problem is if your opponent doesn't make an error, and Capoch is going to hit the force field right here. And this is a tricky part from Capoch's point of view to play out as well. This is a point a lot of Protoss lose the game. They're in a situation right here, right? And from this position, theoretically speaking, Capoch wins, right? He has to contain. His opponent, instead of counterattacking, is trying to break down the ramp, and he hit the force field perfectly. But when you're playing this at home, you shouldn't just say, okay, I win. You should focus on 2 things. The first, being hitting this force field perfectly, you want to trap a couple units on the low ground. Don't be too greedy. If you let too many units down, they can focus down your sentries and maybe break out later. Just 1 or 2 or 3 units is fine. That's a big deal in PvP. Every unit is so important when you're on one base. Then when you kill these guys, the most important thing, make sure these units cannot attack. So you think about what's the range of the units on the high ground, right? The range of these units on the high ground, well, they're mostly Stalkers or Immortals. That's range 6. It's going to be range 6 away from the high ground. It's going to be something like this. So step 1, hit the force field. Step 2, make sure none of your units go past that range line, right? And that's the micro you should be thinking about. So if you look at what Capoch is going to do, he's going to think about that. And also, if you have high ground vision, like he does with the Mothership Core, you can consider trying to pick off some of the units on the edge too. But that's a risky move. If you're very good, you can go for it. The most 2 important things, though, is take advantage of this position by just having your entire army only fight a couple units at a time. So we can see getting back in the game, we can see that's exactly what Capoch is going to do. He's a force field perfectly. He's focusing down these units here. Then he needs a time warp because he's thinking about maybe should I go and engage him, realizing not, he's going to back away. And then the next thing, make sure you have another sentry so you can hit that force field again. So immediately warp in a second sentry. Huck tries to move down. If he tries to move down again, another pylon or another force field can trap him. So from this point of view, if you're Huck, you're saying, you know what, I tried to move down the ramp, that didn't work, I just lost an Immortal and a Stalker for, I think he only killed a single Stalker of Capoch's. And he lost actually a couple Zealots too, so overall not a great trade by Huck. Overall, you can see units lost not in his favor. The best way to break this contain is to force your opponent to have these units back at home. And the way to do that is with counterattacking. Now ideally, instead of breaking down the ramp and losing the Immortal, he would have stayed with 3 Immortals, which is enough that they can't blink on top of you. And then he would have chrono boosted a Warp Prism. The Warp Prism could have counterattacked. And the trick is that your opponent is going to have 3 to 4 Warp Gates of Warp and Reinforcements. If you have a Warp Prism, you fill it up with 4 Gateway units, and you have 4 Gateways, that means you could have 8 Gateway units in your base. The 4 the Warp Prism unloads, and the 4 that of course you warp in, and they can't warp in enough, they have to retreat. All of a sudden the contain's broken, and you get some economic damage done. Now if you don't have the Warp Prism, next best thing is to do what Huck did, which is warping units on the low ground and try to sneak them by. Now from Capoch's perspective, from his position, you should be doing 2 things. 1, you should be warping in only sentries to help the contain. And 2, you should be building Nexus, and then getting an early warning detection system from a potential counterattack. And so that early warning system can let him know there's units coming, I need to make sure I have enough weapons to deal with them. And again, Huck tries to break down the ramp the straight way, and you can see exactly the problem with this. Without a way to deal with force fields, without Archons or Colossi, you're going to hit those force fields, pick off all the Immortals, and now Capoch, of course, takes another beneficial trade, assuming he can back away, and that's just not good. Now this is the point where Capoch is getting a little greedy because, yes, he's taking very advantageous engagements. You can see here now he's up by 1,000 in resources lost. But there still comes the point that he's not quite strong enough to totally kill his opponent. If you look at Units tab, he's a little bit stronger, but with the Photon Overcharge, he'll buy enough time to get another Mortal out, and then there'll be enough for Huck to defend. So again, from Capoch, the point of view is, okay, use the contain, get economic advantage to expand, and keep forceful in the low ground every time he tries to move down here. And then from Huck's point of view, it's stay alive, hit a counterattack because his army is across the map. You can see that's exactly what's happening here. The army is across the map. There's no early warning detection system, so Capoch doesn't see it until just now. And now, if he has enough warp in cycles, he can warp in Stalkers and deal with this, but that's going to require micro, and he's going to have to make sure that on this front he doesn't have to worry about too much. So this is where really, ideally, he wants to back down the ramp here, get the sentry to hold the contain, just hold Huck to 1 base, while he deals with this counterattack and takes 2. The problem is that he doesn't have the warp ins to deal with this counterattack. We can see here he's only warping 1 unit at a time, and just fighting 4 Zealots at once. And that gives him a sense of desperation where he feels desperate, so he tries to jump on his Immortal and focus it down. But there is, 3 Zealots there, and I mean, Huck just had too many units to suicide onto it before. And now we can see Huck's going to take the army advantage. There's no sentries to hold the contain, so Huck breaks the contain. And he's taking a lot of economic damage at home as well. So from here, I mean, a couple minutes later, Huck's going to win. He just expands, and then, I mean, it's you can see here, the income, 8 more workers for Huck. Army value, significantly ahead for Huck, so we can go ahead and build that Nexus, and then it's going to be 2 bases to 1. He's going to go ahead and win the game. So the important things to know about this game are really basically this. Against a 4-gate, make sure no pylons get close unless you have no sentries to hold your ramp. Always avoid fighting superior numbers. We can see that when Huck had superior numbers with the 4-gate, Capoch backed away, let Huck pat on his building some until he got that extra warp in to match numbers. When Capoch had superior numbers, Huck backed away, and yes, he was contained, but he stayed in the game. If you try to fight an opponent who has a lot more units than you happen in the end when Capoch tried to blink on top of Huck's army. Huck's army was bigger. Without the ability to use Blink to micro, the Zelda Mortal combination is always going to beat the Blink Stalker, if they don't have Blink anyways. And so Huck was able to win the game because Capoch took that fight against superior force. So never fight an opponent with superior numbers, unless you have some insane positioning like we saw with the Contain and the Choke. And also, from Huck's point of view, you can see what worked for him. Well, that Zealot counterattack basically won him the game. It's that simple. You always want to counterattack against a Contain if you have that possibility. What didn't work for him was trying to charge on the ramp. He lost 3 Immortals and several units for almost no gain. The only gain was it made Capoch confident enough. Capoch did a suicidal attack. But you shouldn't rely on your opponent making that mistake. You should, ideally, you just want to say, okay, I can't break the Contain unless he messes up. Let's not assume he'll mess up. Let's do enough counterattacks that he'll be forced back. And ideally, War Prism even helps with that as well. This wraps up our first segment on PvP, the importance of map control and setting up those contains, and then being able to take an expansion and an advantage over that. We'll take a short break and be back with our second segment, taking a look at Huck versus XY.